I know. I was like, Mercury retrograde is out, so we definitely shouldn't have any issues with that.
Mercury retrograde is real.
It is real. A lot of people like laugh at it, and I'm like, oh, don't laugh, because everything you're about to, go through is about to completely change. And the first Mercury retrograde that happened while I started working here, the entire I came in and couldn't even do the show because everything in the studio had shut down. Nobody could figure out why. So, second Mercury retrograde, I've had nothing but computer problems. Because, I don't know if you know anything about this, but my grandmother studied it. Mercury controls communication, and it controls contracts, and it controls travel. So those three things are generally affected when it goes into retrograde. And I have found it to be true. And they say almost everything that happens in retrograde will happen again in another retrograde, which is kind of fascinating.
Damn it.
Right? Okay, set us up for this track, Digging Holes.
This was called Digging Holes. I co-wrote it with everybody in the band. We're all co-writers.
Okay, and this is the band finally that you started on your own, right?
Yes, and so it's Matt Hutt on lead vocals and John Wood on harmony vocals, myself on drums, Matt Lyons on bass, and on keyboards is a guy named, actually there's two keyboard players on this, John Watts and Chris Wyckoff.
Okay.
And a genius guitar player. Pay attention to the guitar.
Sure.
His name is Michael Hymas. He's no longer with us. Should have been a household name.
Okay, cool. And we'll talk a little bit more about him after we spin
Digging
this track.
Holes.
Yeah, Digging Holes. You're locked on to LRF102.com. Holmes. You're locked on to LRS102.com. I'm Jen Yates, joined by Mr. Dave Thomas. Dave,
Hey,
great track, man. Great track.
Thanks. That was just one of many. We had a lot of tunes.
Man, yeah,
At
your
one
drumming
point-
is off the hook. I love that conga in the beginning. We were talking about that.
I love playing with drummers. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah,
and
me
I
too.
like the interaction. And it's when I learned to streamline my playing a little bit
Yeah.
more and let that conga just kind of come through.
You know what's funny about, well, first off, I agree with you. Drummers hardly ever get to play with other drummers. That's why I'm always excited when I get to play with like a Ray Rizzo or somebody else. You know what I mean? It's just so much fun. And if you have a percussion player, which I love to play percussion too, it frees you up to do so much more. You know what I mean? When you've got another drummer. Some of
so
my
much-
favorite bands are two drummers, you know?
Yeah.
But I feel like we rarely get to play with each other because obviously a lot of the finances are not there. So unless people want to do it for free, then they're not going to get to play. You know what I mean? To pay two drummers instead of one, you know, is a big to do usually. But it is one of the coolest things you can do is to get to play with other
I
drummers.
love it. I love it. I love there's a quote from Mickey Hart that I really like a lot, you know, because two drummers
I
in the
love
Grateful
Mickey
Dead.
Hart. Yes.
And
Phil Kreutzmann and Mickey
Bill
Hart.
Kreutzmann and Mickey Hart. And Mickey said, we don't play the beat. What we do is we have a conversation about the beat,
Yeah, that's true.
which is kind of cool.
By the way,
Neither
I
one
got
of
to
them was
meet-
playing the whole thing.
Yeah,
And
I
they just
got-
kind of flow around it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I love Mickey Hart. I got to meet him once
yeah?
at Headliners when he did his. What was it? Mickey Hart's. I forget what band it was, but it was one of his like Diga rhythm bands, or it was the one with the tabla player from India. Anyway, yeah, whatever he
Ravi
was doing.
Shankar?
Yes.
No. He's
not him.
Sitar.
Yeah, not him. I forget what his name was. I'm at a loss for words right now. But either way, he had the famous beam there from the Grateful Dead. I got to touch that,
Oh, nice.
which is the instrument that they made for the Grateful Dead for time and space and all that. Cool.
That thing is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll never forget that experience. I got to talk to him, and he was like importing brain waves into sounds at the time. You know, if you haven't read Mickey Hart's The Magic of Drumming, it blew my mind when I read it. It's one of my favorite drum books of all time. I don't know if you've read that
one. I have the Planet Drum book.
Okay, go get The Magic of Drumming.
Mm-hmm.
It is mind-blowing. I mean, he is just on another plane with his drumming. You
He
know,
really
and
is.
He's on another planet with his brain. You know, I mean, I even have a record of Mickey Hart's that's 45 minutes long, one song. And what he did was he took the heartbeat of his child in the womb and then played drums over top of it and made a whole record. And it was written to his son, Taos.
That's great. I mean, was it a loop or was it a
No,
long
it's-
recording? Because
it's
you
a
would think it would speed up and
long
slow down.
recording. It's a long recording. It's the most fascinating thing ever. I mean, again, he's on another planet. You know, when you're taking outer space sounds and brain waves and transporting them into making music with them, I mean, it's just an amazing thing. You know. By the way, I did want to mention this since we're talking about multiple drummers. I read an article yesterday that says drum circles are more therapeutic to human beings in therapy than any antidepressant out there. And they had studies that had, you know, done all these fascinating reports on this. And I completely believe that because I feel like anytime you're taking antidepressants, yes, people need them, but I also feel like it masks the problem that you're not, you know, talk therapy is, I'm a big fan of talk therapy because it changed my life, and not a big fan of medications for it. But now drumming and music, that's a whole different thing. And I do feel like music is a healing force of the world. It really can heal lots of things. And I've seen it firsthand teaching kids with autism. I've got a guy right now who has brain cancer. You know, and I've taught all these people with like fibromyalgia issues, you know, tics. I even taught a kid that was mute that couldn't even speak. And I just saw it change their lives. So I do feel like music and drumming, something about rhythm, is a healing force.
Well, yeah, I've read that when you play music, basically you're using every part of your brain.
Yeah.
And your brain literally just lights up. All the electromagnetic impulses within it, it lights up literally like a bulb.
Right.
And yeah.
They say that it triggers more in your brain than any other thing except for smell. Because if you walk through somewhere and you smell a certain smell, it will trigger a memory back to whatever that smell reminded you of. So music can do that exact same thing. When you hear a song, you're triggered back into either when you first heard the song or some kind of memory that you had associated to the song, or you relate to the lyrics, or vice versa. It's kind of a fascinating thing, right?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, for me, it's a little different just simply because I lost my olfactory senses a long time ago.
In the 70s.
Yeah.
I love that.
But yes.
So let's get back into, let's see, where do we leave off? You're in New York
Drumming,
City.
two drummers.
Two drummers, right.
And yeah, working with Woody was just a revelation for me. And then to be able to write and to also participate in helping them figure out the harmony parts. I didn't sing.
Yeah.
I can sing and drum at the same time. I just don't enjoy it. I feel like I'm not doing either job very well.
I hear you. It's a hard thing to hear pitch when you're behind a drum set.
But I had done it going all the way back to when we were in D Feet. I even then had the boom mic because of the drummer in Grand Funk Railroad was a singer, and he was a big not Mel Collins. Mel Collins, I believe, was the bass player.
Yeah. I was spinning some of his tracks yesterday. I love that intro to We're an American Band.
Yeah.
Yeah, that intro is so great on drums.
And he was a rock solid drummer.
Oh, yeah.
Really good. And he could take a great solo. I mean, the guy was just
there really rarely is any drummers from the 70s that were bad. I mean, let's be real. Look at everybody that you had to compete with.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I mean, there's the specter of Ginger Baker and Keith Moon, who I consider to be a
John
great drummer.
Bonham. I mean, even Buddy Rich was still alive back then, and all the greats. And not only that, I love to bring up the female drummers because I'm in a book on women drum set players. And Viella Smith was around. A lot of people don't remember who she was, but she's 107 this year, and she's still drumming.
Get out of here.
She drummed for Frank Sinatra. And she was what we considered the original Hep girl. Like she was I call her the pioneering shero, because she was one of the first drummers doing it back then when they weren't supposed to. But also you had Karen Carpenter, Sheila E. was starting to come to the forefront in the 80s.
What's the name of that gal that played with Lenny Kravitz?
Cindy Blackman Santana.
Yeah,
she's on the book too. I want to show you this.
Yeah, I saw her play with Santana.
So check this out. I don't know if I've ever shown you this. This is the first book written on women drum set players, and that's me at the top right there. They chose me for the cover. These are all my idols. Viella Smith, Sheila E., Cindy Blackman Santana's on there. Allison Miller, who's an awesome jazz drummer and a friend of mine up in New York City. Debbie Peterson, who started the Bangles, the drummer of the Bangles. And I've met about 4 out of the 6 on that list. And when they were doing this, they had just seen my work online with autistic kids, and they sent me something that just said, can you fill out a bio and send us in a picture? And I said, sure. And I had no idea what it was. Well, I follow Sheila E. on Facebook, and I saw her post. They just told me the book was coming out in April. This was about 4 years ago.
They didn't tell you that you were on the cover?
Nope, they sure didn't. And so I didn't even think it was a big deal. I had no idea it was going to be like the first, So basically, I sent in my stuff. I sent in the picture, and we took this over in Indiana at the ammunitions plant. I just set my drum set up in the country and started rocking, and my best friend took this photo. And so I sent it in, and then I saw Sheila E. post on her Facebook that she was in a women drummers book that was coming out in April. And I thought, that's weird, because that's when they told me my, thing. And I kept going, fingers crossed, I hope it's the same thing. Cindy Blackman Santana, who you were talking about, who's now married to Santana, who plays still with Lenny Kravitz, and is an awesome jazz player and rock player.
Yes, she is.
She posted that she was also in a book that was coming out in April. And I was like, wow, I hope to goodness it's the same book. Then Sheila E. posted this picture of the book. And then I was like, holy
that's
crap.
Great. Look at that picture. You got your hands way up in the air. You're bringing the hammer down.
Yeah, you can't
baby.
even see my face. In most of my famous drum pictures that have done some really cool things, you can't even see what I look like.
You can't even see your face.
So nobody even knows it's me.
Iconic,
but if you look at the back, they give me a little credit. It's like, cover photos, Jen Yates top.
What size kick drum is that?
26.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Bonham.
That's a Gretsch kit, actually.
Bonham. No hole cut, it looks like.
No, not from that one. That one was just for visuals.
Bonham all the way.
Yeah, Bonham all the way. My dad is a vintage drum collector, and so, at one point in my life, I had like 12 vintage drum sets. I'm down to like 2 now. I've taken most of them back home, but he collects 60s and 70s and back, like Rogers, Slingerland, and mostly Ludwig drum sets. So I've got a vintage Black Panther kit that's my main kit from the 70s. It's got the black patent wrap, and then I also have the original Vista lights, the blue see-throughs. He has a 60s silver sparkle kit, that he got here at Durloff's back in the day.
And those swirly kits. I really love those, especially the Gretsch ones with the swirl on them. Love those.
Yeah. This one in particular, I had just gotten that kick drum from Mom's Music. It was a 26-inch Gretsch Catalina rock kit, and I really didn't play it that much, but I did use it for photos, and I always have artists make my logos on the front.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, basically that's my drum logo, and I took it from a crop circle in England, and I kind of wanted a spiderwebby look to it, so we took a crop circle and a spiderweb and put them 2 together, and
that's great.
Became the logo. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because people are still buying these. You can get them on Amazon.com, and they're called Women Drummers: A History from Rock to Jazz to Blues to Country, by Angela Smith, who I'm pretty sure is kin to Viola Smith, who's one of the oldest drummers. It basically follows Viola Smith's career all through, it goes from, and by the way, you'll love this too, it also traces women drummers back to prehistoric times. So a lot of people didn't know that women were some of the original drummers, and that in the 1300s, I think it was 13 or 1400s, the church banned women from playing drums. So after that point, it became a very masculine considered instrument, and it still kind of is today. But this follows, back in the day, prehistoric times, they thought that women playing drums could bring fertility and could bring all this, this Native American kind of belief stuff. And so women would sit around and they would play in drum circles and whatnot. And this kind of goes back and documents that as far back as possible in history. And she does a great job. And then she picked 50 drummers, female drummers, today to watch for. And that's like Sheila E. I'm one of the 50. So
that is really great.
It was really cool. Yeah. And that was about 4 years ago. And then just this year, I went down to Nashville. They picked me up for a female drumming documentary that's now on Vimeo and Amazon Prime. So you can rent that, and it talks about gender roles and whether there's a difference between women drummers or male drum set players mostly. But it's a fascinating thing to get picked up for something like that.
It's great. And looking at that set and you talking about all your vintage sets, makes me think about my set. I should probably have somebody look at it.
Yeah. What do you play now?
Well, I still have my old Yamahas that I bought in 1981 in Denver.
Okay.
They've traveled the whole country with me, and they hold up. They're super round drums. They sound really good.
Yeah.
But I do know that the serial number on them is J1.
Interesting.
So that's a pretty low serial number.
Yeah.
I don't think it gets any lower than 1.
You definitely need to. I would take it to Mom's Music and let Marvin Maxwell look at it.
You think he would know something?
I know he would know. That dude knows everything.
I could probably just take a tom-tom in there, and I don't have to take the whole set.
Yeah, he would do he knows people. He'll probably just call Yamaha straight up and talk to somebody who really knows their stuff.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I didn't know what I had, by the way, the 1970s Black Panther kit. My dad had gotten that set for really cheap in the 80s at a pawn shop. And it was my first set. And so I played on those things for years. I'm still playing on them today. And as you know, once you find your drum set, you're like, that's my kit, And I haven't deviated a whole lot. They sound amazing, and one day, I would play gigs. It'd be raining. I'd throw them in the back of a pickup truck with no cases. It's a wonder they're still in as good of shape they are. I took them down to Mom's Music one day, and Marvin came through, and he goes, "Wow, that's a historic kit." And I was like, "It is?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is a black leather patent wrap. They didn't do leather wraps on drums. This is an experimental thing that they did in the 70s. Ludwig And he was like, wow, it's almost in mint condition. And it was. I don't know how, but... And then he said, you know, you've got a very expensive kit here, and it's very historic. You need to take care of it. So after that, I bought cases for it, and I've babied it ever since.
Good for you. That's
yeah,
great.
But sometimes we don't know what we have. And in fact, Ludwig guys told me that if I peel back the black leather wrap and there's eagles underneath it, because evidently they made some kind of special drums with eagles printed underneath it, that it will like triple the value of the kit or something like that. But I don't want to. No, I don't want to
peel that back.
Correct. I don't want to mess the drums up.
It reminds me of like the Beatles Butcher Block album covers.
Yeah.
Where they put another album cover over the top.
Yes,
and the
I love
fact
those.
is like you might peel it back and find it's not under there, and then you've damaged it. You know. So.
Exactly. I don't want to damage it. Yes. Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about, though. Yeah.
I do. I really do.
Yeah.
And so you should see my drum kit now. Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
My drum kit now is whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Altogether.
I understand.
So, yeah. So,
I want to ask you a little bit about the writing, because we were just talking about how, yes, drummers are not really taken seriously in the writing category, which I think is BS, because I think drummers can be some great writers. And I've set out to prove myself, because I always was a side player, really. I've been in lots of different bands, never really committed to a whole lot. You know, there's a few artists that I committed to, but they're now gone, rest in heaven. But at the same time, that I felt like because of that reason helped me secure a name for myself. You know what I'm saying? And not really, when you hear the Eagles, you think Don Henley, you know, he's one of those standalone drummers. You think Levon Helm is a standalone drummer, John Bonham, you know, those guys, you know their names. And that's kind of what I wanted to.
Ringo.
Exactly.
Let's not leave Ringo out of the conversation.
I agree. I love Ringo. Yeah. So I always wanted to set my name apart as, you know, I wanted to people think, okay, when I think of drums, I think Jen Yates, you know, that's what I think of. Or female drumming wise too. So I felt like not committing to a certain band and playing in all kinds of different styles of bands and doing records of all styles would help me secure that. And at one point I was being labeled as nothing but a rock drummer. So then I started doing theater work just to prove them, you know, no, I'm way more diverse. I can read, I can write, I can, you know, all this stuff. And in fact, on Friday, wish me luck, I've got a huge audition at Actors Theater we're going to go try out for. But yeah, so that helped a lot. And the theater thing, like you're talking about touring, the theater thing, I've done more touring with theater than I have with like rock bands or any of that stuff. Yeah, which ended up me by myself with bands that wherever the band, you know, I went to California with a show called Girlfriend that was, I auditioned for this play at Actors Theater about 5 years ago, and it was based on Matthew Sweet's record Girlfriend in the 90s. And this playwright had written this beautiful LGBTQ play around it, and I got picked up to be the drummer. They needed a female drummer for this particular thing, so I did that. And then after that, the music director got picked up to go to L.A., so they took me to L.A. with it, and then I got to be out there for 3 months and playing it at Kirk Douglas Theater. Yeah, so anyway, a lot of cool stuff going on, but I felt like, you know, playing different styles and not committing 100% to a band helps you kind of secure your name.
Oh, it really does. And, you know, I did a little theater, too, in New York, right when Crank Call Love Affair was breaking up. And before I had started Native, I got a gig playing at Actors Studio.
Cool.
Which was
that's a big
just a really cool place to be at that point in time. It was being run by Joanne Woodward and Ellen Burstyn. And
big names.
And so one of the guitar players that was in Crank Call had written a play with his wife, who's a playwright, and they brought me in to do drumming in the background. I just sort of stood back behind the scrim, and whenever they had a scene, I was adding the beat to it.
Yeah.
You couldn't see me, but I was there.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, you know, Joanne Woodward, Paul Newman's wife, you know, and so when we're playing the show, I would find myself sitting next to Paul Newman sometimes, like after the show or something. And he only ever said one thing to me, and it was in the men's room. We were standing at the urinals. And he just looked over and said, "Good job."
That's it? Dude, my day would have been made. I'm like, Paul Newman just said, "Good job."
I had two thoughts immediately. The first was that Paul Newman just talked to me, but the second one was, I'm taller than him. And I'm not tall. I'm 5'6".
Right, I hear you. That's crazy. It reminds me of being out in L.A. because I was sitting there, you know, it was a very small theater, so it's only like 100-seater theater. And I'd be looking out, and I'd be like, is that Courtney Love? And then I'd be like, holy shit, that's Courtney Love, you know, and it'd be like, or I met the Bengals out there, you know, and it'd be like all these people that I grew up idolizing were there watching me now. And I was like, I'm not for sure how this happened, but it was very magical, you know.
Yeah, it's just, you get out there and you're just walking down the street, you're going to run into people. It's like that in New York, too.
Yeah.
I mean, in L.A., Barry's group you'd see Harry Dean Stanton and people like this all over the place.
By the way, my favorite part about the interview with your brother, Barry, with Love Jones, was he said, yeah, we met Matthew Sweet because Matthew Sweet is the record that took me to L.A., his girlfriend record. And he goes, yeah, we were on the same record label as them. And I said, you were? And he goes, yeah, let me tell you the story. And he said, well, we opened for Tool in the parking lot of the Church of Scientology in L.A. And I went, how did you get that gig? So that was a fascinating interview. But in either way, Tool, Love Jones.
Did he tell you that the Church of Scientology told them that they would never play in that town again? They hated them so much.
Oh, yeah.
But that's when they got their record deal.
Yeah, which is hilarious. And when I was out in L.A. with Girlfriend, our lead actor in the play his parents were in the Sea Org department of Church of Scientology, which is the cuckoo cuckoo part.
That's all the parts of it.
Well, I mean, it is all that you're right. But either way, he had run away from them. And I mean, this kid was in his like mid-20s at this point. And basically they had security like watching over him because they were afraid that he was going to get killed by the Church of Scientology. Because what they call him thieves. I forget what the word is, but if you leave the church, then they can come after you, basically. Yeah, whatever they call that.
It's like they take a contract on you when you join.
Yeah.
That's it.
And he didn't want to be a part of it. His parents were a part of it, and he was running away from it. So every time they'd try to call, he'd tell them he was dead. And so, you know, but either way, the theater, you know, was really like protective over him because they were worried about him at the time. So that's nothing to mess around with, you know. But yeah, continue on about your travels after that in New York City.
Well, the beauty of New York is that, like the Paul Newman thing, you'd find yourself standing next to somebody on the sidewalk. Yeah. Everybody in New York walks.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to stay in shape, but you find yourself like standing next to people like, you know, I've stood next to Andy Warhol crossing the street, or Ray Davies from the Kinks.
Yeah.
And, you know, New Yorkers have this whole thing of they're not going to bother a celebrity when they see him.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about New York is they don't start fawning over a celebrity when you see it. And you just have to maintain that. It's kind of hard when you're standing next to the freaking leader of the Kinks.
Yeah, I know. I bet.
One of my absolute top favorite bands. I mean, the Kinks. I can't say enough good things about the Kinks.
Did their drummer sing?
No, he didn't sing. No, what a great drummer!
I'm thinking about the Knack, not the Kinks.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
My
K-bands.
Sharona.
Yeah.
So that was really great, and doing the theater thing that worked out really good. But I needed a band, and I started Native, and that turned into a pretty good thing. We were together 10 years, and we toured all over the upper Northeast, everywhere from. But the beauty of living in Manhattan back then was that you could basically just tour Manhattan. Yeah. You could play on the Upper East Side one night, the Lower West Side the next night, Upper West Side the next night, and then back down to the Lower East Side the next night, and then Midtown, Times Square. You could just go around and build a following. And that's exactly how Blues Traveler got started. That's exactly how Spin Doctors did it. They didn't, and you didn't have to even play Brooklyn. You could just play Manhattan.
Yeah.
Now, New Jersey also had really great venues. And to this day, people in New Jersey go out and see bands.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really good place to go try to get your name started. People will come and see you. They'll become fans. They'll sign up. It's a much cooler state than its rep.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I was trying to think if I've played Jersey. I think I've played Jersey. Yeah, I've played Jersey. I forget what the venue is called. But we'd go up there and play Brooklyn Bowl a lot up in New York City.
Yeah.
I did that fairly recently.
I got my Wilco shirt that I'm wearing.
Oh, yeah.
I got it at Brooklyn Bowl.
Yeah, that's a great venue to get to play. I was in a band called The Band is Bond, and we did all these James Bond theme songs.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Yeah, and you'll love this. It was an all-star band. I was fortunate enough to be the drummer. Freak Bass, who I'd toured with, was on bass, who, by the way, studied under Bootsy Collins. He's one of Bootsy's, funk slap premier bass players, and he comes through Louisville all the time because he's in Cincinnati, and we're still great friends. Razor Sharp, rest in peace, who was with Parliament Funkadelic and Bootsy's Rubber Band, was our piano player. And then, and of course, he toured with George Clinton. So he had these amazing stories. We'd be on the road together, and he would tell me all these crazy stories about touring with Parliament and all this stuff. But also, we had the horn section from Fish, which was Natalie Cressman, and Jennifer Hertzwick of Fish sang lead. So we had like, and I forget who all, T-Sly, it was just, I mean, it was like a 8-piece band or something, but it was all-star bass player, you know, just everybody in the band was really good. I was fortunate to play with them at Brooklyn Bowl.
What a cool thing.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, but continue on. I love the Brooklyn Bowl.
Well, Brooklyn Bowl was really great. I want to go back to Native when we were first getting started. We were all going to a place called Tramps, a big nightclub in Manhattan, just right below the Flatiron Building there at 23rd Street. And a great New Orleans band called The Meters.
Oh, I love The Meters.
Played there all the time. They were there like every 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
And they
What's his name? Zigaboo?
Zigaboo Modaliste.
Zigaboo, man.
Oh, my God.
Sissy Strut.
What a great drummer.
If you haven't learned that one, that's like I feel like the Sissy Strut is a requirement for a drummer if you want to be great.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of those tracks that
and you could spend the rest of your life trying to play that one correctly.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
It's got a million variations on it, and there's a lot of YouTube videos, people trying to teach people how to play, and they all do it different.
Yeah, they all do it different. You'll love this. I have a kid that's about 11 years old that's one of my drum students, and I went in maybe a month ago, and I said, "What are we learning today?" You know, because I teach them fundamental stuff. We do a little bit of reading, and then I usually let them have a little fun. I'll let them pick a song that they really like, and we'll learn parts of it. And he picked The Meters, Sissy Strut, and I thought, oh Lord,
but
smart kid, smart kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he's been playing in the Louisville Leopards for a long time, and he's a great little drummer. But you know, we'll pick songs along the way. He picks a Joan Jett track, and it's always fascinating to me to see what the kids want to learn to play.
And get them going good on that. And
it's usually not modern stuff, believe it or not. It's usually that classic rock stuff.
I know, isn't that an amazing thing?
It is. That's why I feel like I'm not worried about our future in music, because I'm like, I teach these kids and they're smart as all get out.
It's so true.
It is. And they have YouTube. They know who Buddy Rich is. They know who Gene Krupa is. These drummers today, these little kids, they go watch YouTube and they can watch 40s, 50s, 60s music all the way to current. Yeah. You know what I mean? So therefore, they're way more diverse than we were as kids.
There's the video of Ringo Starr. I think he's being interviewed by Jules Holland. And Jules Holland said, "How do you play the beat to Ticket to Ride?" Because that's a beat everybody likes, but it's a very unusual beat.
Yeah.
And so Ringo just sits down at the drums and shows you how to do it. We didn't have that back then.
Yes.
And, so although you could watch the Beatles made movies, so you can see him playing it and help.
Right.
But still, for a young person who maybe hasn't seen that movie, YouTube is such a great resource.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah.
So I'm going to see The Meters quite a lot, and all the members of Native, and that really kind of informed part of our sound, the congas and everything. They also had Cyril Neville on congas in The Meters. They had switched to a 5-piece.
Right.
And Art Neville, the great late Art Neville on organ of the Neville Brothers. And just so many great people in that band, but we've already mentioned Zigaboo Modaliste.
Yeah.
And so we were going to see them all the time, and they kind of got to know me, and we got to know them. And there was a time when they were playing, and at Tramps, groups did 2 shows. And they had brought in another New Orleans band called the Soul Rebels. And they were all horns, no guitars, no bass, just horns and 2 drummers.
Wow.
And both drummers missed the plane and didn't make it to New York. And they had to play 2 shows without 2 drummers.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't know what they were going to do. And it was only about an hour till showtime. They called me.
Wow.
And so I went over there, and it was total panic time for everyone.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And
wait, did you have time to prepare music?
No, I couldn't even listen to their record. There was no time.
Yeah.
And so
that's stress right there.
They came up with a great way of doing it. And that was the singer just stood right next to me. So he was up on the drum riser, put his microphone up there, and it looked like he had his arm around me. But he was just tapping me on the back where the Pulse was.
Yeah.
And then I put the New Orleans in there.
Cool.
And
that is awesome.
so, but the best part of the story is that after the first set, they the band was so upset. Their drummers weren't there. They were downstairs and they were flipping out. The dressing rooms were directly under the stage at Tramps.
Yeah.
And so they're down there screaming and hooting and hollering. And they got so mad they started playing their horns and they're marching around down in the basement with their horns. Meanwhile, the Meters are playing a show upstairs and I can hear all this coming up through the floor. And so after the Meters set, Art Neville walks into their dressing room and he just ripped them up and down like I have never seen anybody. And in a way that only Art Neville could do because it was so New Orleans. It's like, you don't do that to Art Neville. You don't do that to the Meters. Yeah. I'm the sheriff of New Orleans. I take care of all my women. And he just ripped them for 20 minutes. They were hanging their heads in shame. Mm-hmm. And he turned around and he's walking out of the room. And just as he's going out, he looks at me and he goes, "None of that was aimed at you. You're doing a great job."
Oh, wow. I have a very similar story. It reminded me of, and by the way, that's an amazing story. You've got to be terrified. And I was myself. I got to play with Bobby Keys down in Nashville at the Mercy Lounge with a great band, but I just happened to be getting a cymbal endorsement in Nashville, and they needed a conga player, right? So because they were going to be doing all the Stones tracks, right? And a lot of that Stones stuff, has conga on it. Not only were they doing that, but they were doing all the work that he had recorded on, which was John Lennon's "Whatever Gets You Through the Night." Lots of conga on that.
Yeah.
All the Mad Dog and Englishman by Joe Cocker. Lots of conga on that. So I'm just brought in to play conga. I have no idea what I'm about to do. And we're in rehearsal for sound check, right? And I don't know. I know maybe 3 people in the band. I don't know Bobby and I don't know anybody else. And we're warming up and all this stuff. And I mean, this was about 4 years ago. So he was toward the end of his career. He is now crossed over, and is in heaven. Rest in peace, Mr. Bobby Keys. But, we're playing all these songs in the craziest green room I think I've ever seen. There were chicks everywhere. Chris Robinson of the Black Crowes was opening up for us with his own solo project. And I just remember him being like this really tall dude, whatever. Either way, we get out there, we're playing the songs, we're playing the set. And I forget what happens, but the band like crashed and burned on a couple of those songs. And we go back to the green room after the show, and here he comes, and he's ripping the whole band a new asshole. And I was terrified. I'm like, sitting in the corner because I don't really know, you know what I mean? And he rips everybody a new one. And he's like, evidently there's 2 songs. I forget "Bitch" is one of them, and I forget what the other one is, but there's 2.
You're outdoing me on the swear jar.
I know. I'm going to throw some in. Yeah, but either way, there's 2 Stone songs that sound similar but are totally different, and the band had gotten those reversed, right? So he wanted to play one, and they started playing the other, and it kind of threw him for a loop. So he's cussing everybody out. His face is all red and blah, 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 blah. And then he stops, and he looks at me, and he goes, "But he goes, "I love." And he's like, and I'm all like, because I was like, I didn't know how to feel about that. It was very awkward. But afterwards he came over and he autographed my set list and he wrote, "I love you forever, Bobby Keys," and great job or whatever. But he ripped the rest of the band a new one, but not great. Me. Yeah, so it's very similar.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
I'm going to reverse the interview here, drummer to drummer. I'm sure you've done gigs where you had to play the other band's drums.
Yes.
Now, that's something that I bet people don't talk about a lot when they talk about drumming.
Probably
but
not.
A lot of times you have to use somebody else's drums. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but my whole thing was I didn't want to move them around too much because I knew they were going to have to come back.
Right.
And you didn't want them to walk on and suddenly find everything in the wrong spot.
Right.
And the only time you'd have to really make changes that I did anyway was if it was a lefty.
I've shown up to play and literally had to go out on stage because I was there late and the set was lefty. Yeah. Like completely set up backwards. And then I'd be like, whoa.
So the thing is, and I'm sure this happened to you too, you're playing their drums and they're standing right there watching you because they don't want you to destroy their drums also. They're a little worried, but they're also drummers like to watch drummers. And so, I mean, when I think of the drummers who stood there watching me play, like Terry Bozzio.
Oh, wow.
Matt Apt from Government Mule.
Oh, I love him.
Richie Hayward from Little Feat.
Dude.
And yeah,
I got
it's
cold chills when you said all those names. I'm like, I could not imagine playing in front of Terry Bozzio. You know what I mean? I'd be like,
it was just crazy. The Richie Hayward. I have a funny story about.
Shoot, I get nervous when Marvin Maxwell or Max walks in the room. You know what I mean? I've had to play in front of them a lot.
It's terrifying because one of your heroes is watching you play.
Yeah.
And
I had to play in front of Debbie Peterson. That was a big deal. Her and her sister started the Bangles, and she was the drummer, you know. So that was pretty terrifying.
Levon Helm.
Oh, wow.
I did a whole gig with Levon Helm and hung out with him backstage for hours and hours. What a great guy. Mm-hmm. But the funny story I have is Richie Hayward is letting me use his drums. He's totally cool about it. And he didn't even take his cymbals down. A lot of people will make you use your own cymbals.
And snare.
And maybe your own snare. Maybe even your kick pedal.
Yeah.
And but he didn't do any of that. Just left the drums up there. And then I said something really stupid. As he's walking away, you know, we'd already agreed on everything. And as he's walking away, I said, and I won't break anything. Mm-hmm. And that's when he turned around and said, well, now you got me worried.
That's hilarious. I love that you got to play in front of some of those famous drummers. I mean, that's pretty big feat.
Native got to open for some pretty cool bands. Baba Olatunji. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't play his drums, but he was there. And Robbie Krieger, we opened for. And
man, I've gotten to meet a lot of very famous drummers, but I've never 2 years ago, I got to meet Sheila E. And that was a big one for me because growing up, other than Karen Carpenter, I had not seen another female drummer like a Sheila E. until Sidney Blackman Santana came on the scene with that. And then Kid Rock had Kim, the famous female drummer. There's a bunch of them now. But back then, there really wasn't, you know what I mean?
There really wasn't. I was amazed, going back to Cindy Blackman before she was Santana.
Yeah.
When she auditioned for Lenny Kravitz, it was right down the hall from me in our studio down on Mott Street, which we used to call it the Radon Room. It was 4 floors down. It used to be an armory, like back in the Civil War days. And but yeah, Sidney Blackman got the gig playing with Lenny Kravitz just at 2 studios down from the one where I was.
Wow. Yeah, what a great gig. I mean, they're both phenomenal musicians. You know?
Oh, man, right?
Yeah, I could only hope for a gig like that. I keep my fingers crossed that something big like that might come one day, you know? It takes is one artist to see and be like, I like her look and I like her playing and let's take her on the road.
You get into a band that gets a little bit of a buzz going for you. Yeah. And you get those gigs where you're opening, but you're playing somebody else's drums sometimes.
Yeah.
And
I was going to talk about that. I always prefer to use my own because I'm always comfy.
Sure.
I'm usually never afraid to move their stuff around, though, and I always move it back afterwards. You know what I mean? Right. But I am a short girl, 5'4", you know, barely 5'5", maybe. And a lot of these drummers that I have to play in front of or behind are really tall dudes, you know, that put their cymbals really high up, like a Stuart Copeland or something like that. And I'm short. I like everything to just be right here. So I'm never really scared about using somebody else's stuff, but I do notice that I tend to drop sticks and sticks go flying quite often because if you're not, Jeff McAllister said it, if you're not comfortable behind your kit, then you're not going to play very well. And I feel like, yes, I have to be 100% comfortable. Usually we're pushed back in a corner somewhere with no leg room, you know, and all this stuff in these smaller venues. It's incredibly hard. So I don't get too terrified about moving, and I always explain to the drummer, I'm going to move your stuff, but I'll move it back as soon as I'm done. You know, but the lefty thing really threw me for a loop. I had only ever had that happen once, and I did not know I was going to be playing that gig. It was at Michigan Women's Music Festival, and I was the house drummer, and they had like 6 stages. So they've got people carting you around to different stages. And if you can network and get more gigs, then you get paid a lot more. So I was networking with everybody, trying to get on every gig I could. So I got on with these older females. In fact, I got on with a lady who had the first gay record of all time. Like, her name is Chris Williamson. The Changer and the Changed from the 60s. It's considered the first LGBT record of all time. Yes, and I got to play with her, and they told me last minute. They told me literally about 10 minutes before I was supposed to go on. They said, just show up. You'll know all the stuff. So by the time I get over, they cart me over in my little golf cart. The show's already going, so I have to come out, and they're like, you know, wait till after the first song and then just kind of slip out behind the drums. So I slip out in front of thousands of people, and then all of a sudden it's a left-handed setup drum set, and then I had to really rewire my brain because now my right foot is supposed to be doing what my left foot's doing, and my left foot's doing what the right foot's doing, and the arms are all backwards. I was all kinds of confused, and I made it through, but I don't know how. It was a struggle.
I don't know how you did it either. I couldn't do that.
Yeah. No. Well, I had no choice. It was like, I was just kind of thrown into that.
And you've probably also been in the position, we both probably have, I know I have, where it's reversed, where some other band's opening for your group and they have to use your drums.
Oh, yeah.
And then you come back and maybe a lefty has been playing them and he lefty. Yeah. So here it is. At showtime, the band's starting to play the first song and you're still moving the hi-hat back over to the other side. And that's a nightmare. So I always try to be very respectful, like you were saying, and make sure that things are back where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
You have to move them.
Mine's always levels, like the heights of things, because most everybody sets things up a lot higher than me. I like to kind of set above my kit, but also I like them set down low and easy to reach. So I also I don't want to forget to talk about your work with Dee Dee Ramone. How did you get into that?
Well, this was a little after Native. So we're still going to play one more Native song.
Sure, let's play it. You want to
play
it
it now? This is one I wrote. This is one of my first complete songs where I didn't have any help.
Love it.
And it's called
Sweet Intensity.
Sweet Intensity.
All right.
I almost forgot my own song title. Here it comes.
All right. Sweet Intensity. You're locked on to LRS.
It's all that I got. And I'm just moonlight driving. 1 hour asleep, a one-lane road, and coffee my co-pilot. Oh, you may not believe me, but I tried to change your mind. You didn't even know me, but you knew I was not unkind. It's just different circumstances. Oh, I say, come
Come on, come on, come on, come on. I like that. It's super catchy, Mr. Dave Thomas.
Sweet Intensity.
Sweet Intensity.
So, philosophy for life.
Yes, it sure is. I love that one. That's a great track.
Thank you.
And I love that you wrote that one yourself.
That one was all me. And it was a big thrill to finally not just be a contributor, not to be just a collaborator, although collaboration is fantastic.
Yeah, I love collaboration. I've always collaborated with usually one other person, usually not a full band, but sometimes I could just get hired to do like tracks for other artists and stuff like that. And I've done my own, I've produced my own records for like the past 3 years, but this next journey that I'm on, which I've got like 40 something tracks already, is the first time it's just me. I'm producing it, I'm writing it, I'm playing everything on it, doing the vocals, which I've never really done a whole lot of. I don't really sing a whole lot. I can do harmonies, but, rapping is my thing. And I grew up playing drums and rapping over top and triggering samples and playing over, trying to be a one-woman show, basically.
Kick ass.
Yeah, ding. I love that, yes. No, but, I always saw these. I always thought, why does the drummer have to be in the back? Why can't the drummer be in the front? And back in the day, they used to be in the front.
Why can't the drummer be in the front?
They can be in the front.
About a month ago, I went to Nashville and saw King Crimson at the Ryman Auditorium, folks. The King Crimson at the Ryman Auditorium. Wrap your brain around that. Imagine.
By the way, my friend Sarah Lee was on tour with Robert Fripp for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Well, Fripp.
She was my bass player at Actors Theater here. She also was the bass player of the B-52s.
Yes.
Thompson Twins.
Yes.
Yeah, Joan Osborne. I mean, her list is Gang of Four is where she got her start.
She's amazing.
Yes.
And
amazing person as well. And one of my favorite bass players to ever get to work with, female-wise.
They're really great.
Yeah.
And so what I really liked about, I love King Crimson. I've always loved King Crimson. And what they do now, they have not one, not two, 3 drummers.
Oh, wow.
3, I'm telling you.
Cool. And, are they 3 drum set players, or do they got percussion?
Full drum sets, and those guys also have like mellotrons and keyboards next to them, and xylophones and all kinds of percussion around them.
You gotta love that.
And they put them in the front.
Love it.
They're up front.
Yeah.
And so almost every song begins with a drum solo spread out over 3 drum kits with 3 guys.
Love it.
And they're laughing. They're having such a good time, just making it up as they go along. It is, if you get a chance to see King Crimson, don't miss that opportunity. They're not going to be around forever. And it's a once-in-a-lifetime musical experience I think everybody should have.
Absolutely.
It's really fantastic.
So we got about 20 minutes left. I definitely want to get to the Ramones stories.
Okay, so to the Ramones, can you play a CD?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what track do you want?
It's the very last one.
On which one?
On Ain't It Fun?
The D.D. Ramone one?
D.D. Ramone.
Yeah, give me, tell the story, though, so I can get it queued up.
Sure enough. Native broke up, sadly, around 2001. And literally to go right along with 9/11, Native broke up. And we didn't plan it that way. It just worked out that way.
Were you in New York City when that happened?
Yes.
You were?
Yeah.
The
first plane flew right over our building.
Are you serious?
The first plane crossed Manhattan. The second one came across the Hudson River.
Right.
But the first one, it just went right over. And I was like, what was that? And, because planes aren't normally allowed to fly over Manhattan. And this one was flying very low in order to evade radar. So it was just right over the rooftops.
Yeah.
And,
I was actually on a plane on 9/11 coming from, I was coming from Oklahoma to Memphis, and then from Memphis to Louisville. I was supposed to be back. I was working in TV for a Warner Brothers affiliate here. I was supposed to be back at work that night. Well, I was stranded for 16 hours in Memphis because as soon as we were on the runway about to take off, and then they backed the plane up off the runway and then went back and just said, per the government, everybody's got to get off this plane. Well, everybody was freaking out thinking there was a bomb on board or something.
Right.
So I walk out, and I'm by myself, and I see across the way, I see all these people gathered around the bar, and they're just glued to the TV. And I thought, what's going on over here? So I walk over there, and that's when the second plane hit. I saw the second plane hit. Yeah, so I was stranded there for a long time.
So yeah, I was right in New York when all that happened.
Wow.
And it was an unbelievable experience, but I've never been more proud of New Yorkers. I mean, they have grit.
Yes,
they
do.
Have a grit about them. And it was a tough day. I mean, but it wasn't a freak out day.
Right.
People kept their heads, and that was just really something.
Yeah.
So at any rate, Native was broken up, and I was doing a lot of session work, recording other people, working on my own music quite a lot, starting to record with my brothers on the country stuff.
Yeah.
And I got the opportunity. I met Dee Dee at the Hotel Chelsea on 23rd Street.
I've been there, man. That's
And-
where the famous Sid and Nancy stuff happened.
Yeah, and all the famous
Yeah.
people, all the Andy Warhol people, Velvet
Oh, man.
Underground,
By the way, do you know who Penny Arcade is?
the band, or
No,
the woman.
the woman.
Mhm, no.
She's a performance artist there, and she was in that whole Andy Warhol scene. I got to stay with her the last time I was in New York City. Well,
that is
time
too
before
cool.
last. Yeah, and she was telling me all these amazing stories about hanging with Andy Warhol, and she's still rocking up there. I mean, pretty much everybody underground knows who she is, but she's
That's
got
really
books
cool.
out, and she's on my Facebook. You'll see her like every now and then pop up. Anyway,
I would-
tell
I
me
would
which
go-
track we're doing here.
It'll be the last one.
All right, I got
It's
you
called
queued
Please
up.
Kill Me.
Yeah, I love it. Please kill me.
And the
Been
Hotel
there.
Chelsea, man, I would meet so many cool people just riding in the elevator. I rode in the elevator with B.B. Buell and Emmylou Harris.
Oh, wow.
who
Yummy.
I've been in love with her all my life.
Me too. Her trio record with Dolly Parton
Oh,
is one of my all-time
It's
favorites.
Just get ready to have your heart torn out if you
Yep.
listen to that one. But yeah, hanging out with Dee Dee was great. I only played with him for kind of a hot minute. He'd already done this album that this track appears on. It came out in Germany, but then it got a English release. It was never released in the United States.
Okay.
And so my track, this demo that we did, it's really just a demo. It was meant for Joey.
Yeah.
For his solo album, which was coming up.
Yeah.
So he came to the studio. So I eventually met all four Ramones, but I didn't meet them at the same time.
Yeah.
I met Dee Dee and Joey, but I'd already met Johnny at a video place out in the Valley in L.A.
Wow.
And then eventually I met Tommy Ramone, the original drummer who had turned into a bluegrass musician.
Wow.
And I saw him opening for Earl
fascinating.
Scruggs at B.B. King's. And so I got to hang with all four Ramones. but
Wow.
I really hung out with Dee Dee and his wife Barbara quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the studio with them, and this is the result. It's
All
called Please Kill Me. And he also wrote a book called Please Kill Me. So it's the title of his book.
Yeah.
But it was meant for Joey to sing. And unfortunately, Joey didn't live long enough to record this tune. So this is the only version of it that there is, as far as I
Okay.
know.
So it's off the album Ain't It Fun? Dee Dee Ramone, Please Kill Me. And we're going to listen to it right now. Let's see if it'll play. There it is. You're locked on to LRS102.com, The Walrus.
Please
Yeah, that's Please Kill Me off of the album Ain't It Fun? Dee Dee Ramone, Dave Thomas. That was an awesome track right there, too.
Dee Dee Ramone.
Dee Dee Ramone,
Gone
man.
but not forgotten.
Absolutely. What a great opportunity for you to get to play with like some of Punk's originals, you know what I mean? It
was
doesn't
really
get any better than that.
That was just truly a great experience. Walking into the studio, I mean, I'll tell a little story about working with Dee Dee.
Sure.
You'd walk into the studio and everybody was spread out. The drums were way over on one side of the room. The bass was way over there. We were way spread out. In the middle of the room was a table with what must have been a half pound of marijuana stacked up and all these rolling papers all around it.
Mm-hmm.
And Dee Dee said there's only one rule, and that is you roll your own and you don't share with anybody.
That's hilarious. I love that story. Roll your own pot. Don't smoke with anybody, because I consider pot to be like a social thing. You know what I mean? It's rare if you're sitting there smoking it by yourself.
Yeah.
Usually it's a pass it around and everybody has a good old time.
Even if it's a pipe.
I keep saying we need to invent pot bombs.
Yeah.
If we're going to drop bombs, let's drop bombs and get everybody like stoned and then go back in with like Twinkies a couple hours later, you know, Snickers bars. They'll love you, man.
Nose hits.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, I was going to tell you, though, the last time I got to, well, not the last time, but I've played New York City a lot, off and on. But I was playing with a rockabilly band up there from Louisville. And we were somewhere in the East Village, and we were going to get pizza, you know. And we walk in, and my lead singer had on a T-shirt that was the New York Dolls. It was like all four of them. There's four of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Five, yeah. And we walk in, and there's this older lady there, and she looks like a, you know, party band hippie kind of chick, you know, a groupie kind of thing. And she's standing in line, and she looks at his shirt, and she goes, she starts laughing. And I was like, what are you laughing at? And she goes, New York Dolls. And I was like, oh, yeah, you a fan? She goes, no, I slept with 3 out of 5 of them. And I was like, it's one of my favorite moments ever. I'm in a pizza joint with some hippie, groupie lady who slept with 3 out of 5 of the New York Dolls.
That's an achievement.
Yeah, but that's New York City for you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Well, Dave, I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
I've had a great time.
Yeah. If people want to check out your music, is it online anywhere?
Not yet.
Accessible?
I'm working on an album right now.
Okay.
And I started it in New York. And right around the time Donald Trump got elected, which is no coincidence.
Right.
And I've been working on it. Then I moved here and continued. I couldn't find a guitar player in New York. Everybody up there, I mean, all the people I found were shredders, and I just didn't want shredding. I wanted melodic playing. And my cousin Donnie Irwin is just that. He's just so good. And so we've just finished an album, recording it, but it's being mixed up in Brooklyn. And unfortunately, the engineer is away for the Christmas holiday, so I couldn't get a mix together to bring in today. So maybe, you know.
Well, in the future, absolutely. You're welcome on anytime.
I would love to come back.
Yeah, and there's plenty of times where I don't have guests, so feel free to just pop on in.
There's no shortage of drum things just to talk about.
Oh, we can talk about drums all day. I could literally, you know. You're working for, you know, for Mom's Music and Marvin for 10 years and teaching for 12. I've been playing for 39 now. So, you know, it's like.
You've got plenty of drum tales to tell.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And, you know, working in theater a lot of times, I mean, that's the, I feel like if you can do theater and orchestra, you can do anything, because for me at least, because, you know, I've played in lots of different bands over the years and done a lot of different records, and I was like you, I wanted to be a writer. So I've always, you know, been a journalist or a writer, you know, and almost every job I've had has required me to be writing something. But I always wanted to focus on my music writing. And I play a lot of different instruments. I played saxophone and clarinet in college, in high school, and a little bit of guitar, a little bit of piano, a little bit of everything. I teach bells on a daily. As soon as I leave here, I go and teach kids, you know. So.
Over at Mom's?
No, actually, I went out on my own about 2 years ago because I had my clients already built up. So I've still got about 25 students a week that I teach privately, and a lot of them are the Louisville Leopards kids and River City Drum Corps kids and all that. And I've got some adults. Yeah. And I've got some adults, so I love to teach. It's always been one of the favorite things of mine. I love to pass that on, you know, and then look at the drummer for like White Reaper. You're like, holy crap, that was one of my students, you know, and now they're on tour with the Pixies and Pearl Jam. couldn't get any cooler, you know.
Legacy there.
Yeah, but I feel like once you've done theater, you know, if somebody's coming in, they hand you a 200-page score that you've got to sit and read right now, then, you know, if you can do that, you can do just about anything. So
Yeah, I can't do that.
yeah, I love theater, and it's paid me a lot more, and it's taken me across the world. You know what I mean? Just
kick ass.
doing some cool stuff. Yay! More money for charity. Well, Dave, thank you so much for coming on. I think we've got everything. You've talked about your new band too with your brothers. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
I wish y'all much success, and come back on the show anytime.
Any old time.
Any old time. And we're gonna throw in some Ramones for you now, just because I've got some Ramones pumped up. So you're locked on to LRS102.com. The Walrus. I am Jen Yates, broadcasting live from the Launch Louisville studios. I do want to remind you, tune in on Thursday. I'm going to have Montre Davis from Lincoln Bridge, which, if you don't know anything about them, they're a kind of like a barbershop quartet here in Louisville, and they're beautiful singers. They did our Kentucky Derby. They sang at the Derby, the national anthem, "O Kentucky Home," and all that. Just this year, they've got new material coming out. I just worked with their producer and on another record, and so we kind of got hooked up through that. And then on Friday, I have this beautiful dancer, musician chick coming in. Her name is Love Beverly. In fact, she has filmed a movie in the same building that's coming out soon, and that's what we're going to be promoting. But we're also going to be talking about, I'm about to produce her record, and how we met was pretty magical. And she's also a professional dancer for like Waterworks Company and a bunch of other cool stuff around town. Beautiful girl. So we've got all that coming up later on this week. So check us out, 2 to 4. I'm Jen Yates signing off. I hope you have a great day. And as always, keep it groovy.